It's episode 63 of the Wealth Nation podcast. Now, note the distinction. It's the Wealth Nation podcast, not the Rich Nation podcast. I want you to be wealthy and not rich. So, today on the show, we are talking about the distinction between rich and wealthy and why you need to be wealthy and not rich.
Welcome to the Wealth Nation podcast, a podcast for every mother, daughter, grandmother, sister, and wife, and the men who are smart enough to tune in. The Wealth Nation podcast brings you all you need to know about investments, business, property investments, personal finance, and all-around financial wellness. Here is your host, Yolanda Rose.
Welcome to episode 63. I am Yolanda Rose. Thanks for joining me today on the Wealth Nation podcast. If you're new to the show, please consider subscribing on whichever platform that you are listening on. And if you're a long-time listener, please connect with me, say hello. My email address is yolanda@financiallyfabulousfemales.com. And we're all over social media from TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. The handle is Financially Fabulous Females and a couple of variations in between due to the limitations on the various platforms. But reach out to us. Lots of different content happening on the various platforms. So go and check that out. There's been an exciting week for gold recently. Gold reaching some major highs. And if you're a commodity investor, you are smiling all the way to the bank. So in a couple of episodes, we're going to be looking at gold again. We did talk about it last year when we spoke to the CEO of the Gold Bar, Shalane Perumal. But there's lots of value in gold. And I've been listening to a show or watching a show on YouTube by a guy called Mike Malone. And he is a former rich dad advisor with Robert Kiyosaki, and he's really big into gold and silver investments. So go and check that out. It's called The History of Money on YouTube. The Wealth Nation podcast is sponsored by Audible. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. For a 30-day free trial of Audible, go to www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com/audible. And some other big news from asset managers Signia. They have just released their new fund. It's the Global Healthcare and Oxford Sciences Innovation Fund. And Signia has been really good at bringing us these theme funds like Signia's Fourth Industrial Revolution Global Equity Fund. One of my favorites. I'm actually invested in this as well. And they've also come up with the FANG, the Facebook, the Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google fund as well. So they've come up with the Health Innovation Global Equity Fund, which provides South African investors with exposure to the global healthcare industry. And it's very relevant due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where these big companies are doing research, PB suppliers, and all kinds of companies like that. And really, they've been doing well lately with the crisis. Somebody has to do well, and it's the healthcare industry. So it's definitely something worth checking out. I'm going to be checking it out. Maybe I'll give you a review in a couple of weeks. But it's new. I think it was launched last week. And they're all into health supplies, healthcare distributors, healthcare facilities, pharmaceuticals, equipment, biotechnology, and also into managed healthcare as well. So it's a global fund. It's a great way to get some offshore exposure. So check the Signia website for more details. So today on the show, we are talking about the difference between rich and wealthy. And a lot of the times we mix the two. Everybody wants to be rich. I mean, if you talk to my kids at the young age, they want to be rich. They want to have lots of money. And it's great to have lots of money if you do it honestly and you work hard at it. Yeah, it's great to have lots of money. But I prefer to be wealthy. And you know that I talk about wealth all the time. I mean, it's the Wealth Nation podcast, right? So when we think about being rich versus being wealthy, a lot of the times we mix up the terminology and we think it's the same, but really it's not the same. And for some reason, the words rich and wealthy are often incorrectly used to describe the same thing. And we need to make that correction today. Although it might be hard to spot the difference between these two words, but being rich and being wealthy are definitely not the same thing. By being rich is simply having lots of money or lots of income. And it really comes down to how much cash you have in your bank account. But just because you're rich does not mean that you are wealthy. Rich means that you have lots of money to spend. It can also mean that you have a lot of debt. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If your expenses are higher than your income, being in debt is definitely not something that you want to aspire to. I would rather earn 20,000 Rand a month and live off 12,000 than earn 100,000 Rand a month and live off 999,000. The wealthier person there is the person earning 20K a month. Raising financially savvy children involves teaching them a variety of aspects, from budgeting to planning to earning and saving. Besides giving them an understanding of the value of a rand, it prepares them for real-world finances. Financial literacy is a vital skill, and it is never too early to teach your kids about money. Many parents wonder how they can teach their kids about money and where to find age-appropriate resources. You can now download my Financial Literacy for Kids workbook, which is aimed at primary school kids. It's now available at www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com/shop. This workbook provides you with 12 lessons, activities, lesson plans, discussion points, and quizzes that you can use to test your kids' knowledge on the financial literacy lessons that I have put in place. I have taught my kids financial literacy with the very same content that I am providing you, and I hope that it provides you value as it did for me.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Tuned In. Now back to the show.
People who are rich drive fancy cars, live in amazing houses in the best part of town, but it comes at a cost. If you're making 200,000 Rand a year and you're spending 225,000 a year in expenses, you might seem rich, but honestly, you're on your way to being broke. We see this happen with a lot of celebrities. A lot of them live these rich, lavish lifestyles, but there's no money in the bank. And we see a guy like MC Hammer, even Tony Braxton at one point, they had millions and millions and millions of dollars in the bank account, but they had to file for bankruptcy. Being wealthy is not about having enough money to meet your needs, but being able to afford not to work if you don't have to. It's about amassing assets and income generation and making your money work for you. So in other words, it's having a significant net worth. Wealthy people don't necessarily have the latest gadgets or cars or throw these lavish parties entertaining hundreds of people. But what they do have is lots of assets, a lot of property investments, a lot of regular investments, cash holdings. So if your expenses are 20,000 Rand a month, and if you have 200,000 Rand in savings in the bank, then you have about 10 months worth of wealth. And if you invest that amount, maybe you'll end up with an income of 5,000 Rand as investment income. Then you are wealthy. Then you are really wealthy. And if we look at the most wealthy people in the world, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, they're worth billions and billions of dollars. But Buffett is considered a very frugal billionaire. I mean, the man lives in the same house that he bought in 1958 for $31,000. Now, $31,000 is not a lot of money. I mean, in today's terms, maybe it's about 500,000 Rand. And while he bought a vacation house in California for $150,000 in 1971, he sold that for 7.5 million Rand. I mean, he still drives his what is it? Is it a Chrysler that he drives? And it's like 10 years old. I mean, that is really frugal living. And he's a billionaire. I mean, he's really a billionaire. Now, there's a bit more to being rich versus being wealthy than how much money you have in your bank account. So, in fact, it's possible for someone who makes less than a rich person to be actually wealthier than a rich person with a fancy car and the latest fashion designs. I mentioned that it's better to earn 20,000 Rand a month, live off 12,000 Rand a month, than earn 100,000 and live off 99,999 Rands. While wealthy people have a lot of money, they don't really spend it all at one go. They don't use debt in the consumer sense. They use debt for a clear purpose, such as an investment property. A wealthy person saves as much money as possible and invests in assets, income generating assets, cash flow generating assets. And this means buying things like property, investing in shares, investing in ETFs. Regardless of how they invest though, wealthy people know that in order to grow their wealth, they need to be turning their cash into assets. It's not just about saving. It's nice to save. You know, I really believe in saving. Like when it comes to emergency savings, we need it. Keep 1 month liquid, keep 3 months a little bit more tighter, and keep 6 months a little bit more tighter. But after that, you can't be saving all the time. You've got to transition those savings into investments that bring you assets, that bring you cash flow. So if you really want to become wealthy, there are a few things that you can do to get started. Don't just focus on how big your salary is. Follow the steps I'm about to give you to eliminate debt and have the right mindset when it comes to amassing wealth. You got to save at least 10 to 15% of your salary every month. It's the very first step to becoming wealthy, is to save a portion of your salary every month. No matter how much or how little you make, always set aside 10 to 15% every month. You can create a bank account so that a portion of your salary goes directly into that account. This is an easy way to save without even needing to think about it. You can just do a quick EFT and stash that money away. And if you really struggle with saving, maybe put it into a 32-day account. Look at your budget and find out where you can eliminate expenses. Another key to becoming wealthy is paying off debt. And start with the high interest debt. If you really want to be wealthy, then you have to be debt free. So focus on paying off the debt. Start with the high interest loans, such as credit card and other kinds of consumer debt. Find out if it makes sense to possibly refinance the high interest debt at a lower rate. I think one of the most important things about becoming wealthy is to invest as soon as and as much as you can. That is why I talk a lot about kids' literacy and about getting them investing early while they're young. Use their own money to do it. Let them save. Use their pocket money. And it's one of the quickest ways to grow your wealth is to invest it. Investing comes with its own set of risks, so it's important to talk to a financial advisor who would assess your risk appetite and provide you guidance according to the risk appetite that you have. And there's so many options that are available. No matter what you do when it comes to investments, do something. Do your research and do something. Even if it just means putting it into a savings account with a slightly higher than inflation rate interest, do that while you make up your mind. And I advise a lot of my clients to just hold their money in the money market just for now while we come up with a nice investment plan to spread their risk and bring them the most that we can bring them based on their risk appetite. It's also important not to spend unwisely. You need to learn to be frugal and living within your means. We can't be living in debt all the time. It's no point in clearing out the debt and then we're in that cycle. A month after month, we going and swiping those store cards, we're swiping the credit cards, we're upgrading phones, we're upgrading cars, and the temptation now that interest rates are so low. I mean, you see Facebook, there's people are buying cars like you don't know. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Guys, I don't understand why we can't be frugal, especially now. If we've learned anything from COVID-19, we got to keep our expenses low and boost up our emergency savings. You got to resist the urge to buy this consumer goods, the latest iPhone, those fancy jeans. If you need it, buy it. But don't give in to temptation. Be smart about how you spend your money. Buy on what you need and not what you want. I should get the kids that I coach on finance. I mean, they're so brilliant now at telling me the difference between wants and needs. And hopefully I get their parents to get them to practice that as well. Because if we can get them practicing that now, we'll have such a money-savvy generation in 10, 20 years' time. Think about the long-term financial goals and assets. Growing wealth is a long-term commitment. Especially if you're investing, you got to be in it 10, 15 years to actually see some solid returns. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to build up wealth. And you need to be okay with that. You got to get your mindset right. So when things get tough, remember your long-term goals. Why you choose to try to become wealthy in the first place. All in all, I want you to know that wealth is a mindset. Being wealthy doesn't start with a fat wallet. Wealthy starts with the right mindset. Save a portion of your income, focus on becoming debt-free, invest early and invest consistently, invest often. So if you want to become wealthy, you always need to think about your long-term goals. You cannot give in to instant gratification. And if you want to retire early, you want to own a couple of houses, you want to travel, when thinking about wealth, don't just focus on your income, but focus on building up your investments and your assets to last you a lifetime. All right, so that's my 2 cents on being rich and being wealthy. I hope that I was able to bring you some value with this content. So that's it for me on this week's episode of the Wealth Nation podcast. If there's something that you would like me to cover on anything business related and anything financial related, drop me a line. It's Yolanda at financiallyfabulousfemales.com. All right, so that's it for me. I'll chat to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to visit our website at www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com and sign up for our free investment masterclass.